Visiting her son at her mother-in-law's, the daughter-in-law froze upon hearing her conversation with a neighbor. Quickly grabbing her son, she ran off to do a DNA test. Andres sent Christina an airy kiss goodbye and, feeling completely satisfied, started the car. He was very pleased. His casual affair had evolved into something more. For almost a month now, Andres had been thinking that he felt much better with Christina than with his wife. If not for his son, he might have already confessed everything to Clarissa to put all the cards on the table. But there was one circumstance that greatly troubled him. By modern standards, Andres and Clarissa lived well together. Both had small businesses. He owned an auto repair shop, and she managed a dry cleaning service. They had a solid house and each had a car. So financially, they were both doing well and didn't have any major problems. At first, Andres liked that Clarissa was serious-minded. Even then, she was taking her first steps in business. Her dry cleaning business was a tiny place in one of the basements. But over time, the woman expanded quite well, and along with the scale, as it seemed to Andres, her femininity somehow evaporated. 3 years ago, the man couldn't stand it anymore and made a very thoughtless decision for himself. He wasn't bothered that even a brief affair amounted to infidelity. "Well, what am I supposed to do now? Lose my mind?" Andres said to himself then. "I want to be next to a normal woman, not a robot." That's how he usually referred to Clarissa. Of course, his wife wasn't actually a robot, but her life did follow a certain schedule. In addition to work matters, she had to deal with household issues and spend time with their son. Roman had moved up to 3rd grade, and his extracurricular activities and hobbies took up a significant part of his and therefore his mother's life. Andres tried not to get involved in all of this. Occasionally, he would spend time with his son, but more often he would disappear somewhere, with friends or with lovers. Clarissa was so absorbed in her affairs that she didn't really notice that she and her husband were going out less and spending less time together. Apart from holidays, birthdays, and summer vacations, they had almost forgotten what it was like to simply sit and talk. Andres often said he had things to do. It couldn't be said that Clarissa completely ignored her husband. But Andres felt that he was much more comfortable in someone else's home and bed than in his own. A dangerous delusion that the man had not yet realized. "Something needs to be done about this," he said aloud. "I will never leave Christina. I'm not afraid of divorce. Clarissa will take half of the property, but will she let me see Roman? That's the question. Although, frankly, I'm not interested in that either." In recent months, Andres had become increasingly distant from Roman. Once he thought what he did would be better for both of them. But now his son was starting to annoy him. The boy kept trying to talk to him, but Andres kept cutting him off. He looked at him and understood. The phone rang. He answered it. Clarissa told him she was planning to take Roman to his mother's. It was Saturday. "Clarissa, I'll probably be late today," the husband replied calmly. "We've got a backlog at the workshop. If anything comes up, just give me a call." He glanced at his watch. It was nearly 12 already. He could, of course, linger longer with Christina, but that provoked some pain within him. He was already inclined to leave everything, marry his mistress, but that would mean deciding to divorce his wife. On one hand, Andres was ready for it, but on the other, fear still lingered within him. "And what will she do to me?" he reasoned. "If I no longer love her? Is that a crime?" Of course, in the man's eyes, it wasn't a crime. But delving into philosophy, especially religious discussions, was not his intent. He hadn't killed anyone, so everything else was permissible. Andres decided to visit his old friend. He had been living out of town for quite some time now. Andres remembered how everyone used to laugh at him in school. Orlan had planned to become a gynecologist first, then an obstetrician. Anyone who cared to would make indecent jokes about him. But as it turned out later, Orlan became a very skilled specialist. 5 of his classmates had given birth under his care. About a year ago, he unexpectedly left his practice. He said he was tired. Andres had met him about 4 months ago and was struck by how much his life had changed. "Oh, Andres." "Hey, buddy," the host exclaimed joyfully. "Come on in." He swung open the gate wide. Orlan, even when he was working as an obstetrician, had divorced his wife. Or rather, she had left him. At that time, Orlan had been a normal person, as Andres had called him. He earned well, gladly accepted gifts. The wealthy sought his help. Orlan had helped Andres as well, for which Andres had also generously thanked him. But the doctor's wife wasn't satisfied with anything. She drove an expensive car, vacationed abroad, while Orlan worked and took significant risks. He didn't cheat on her, despite leading a respectable life. But after the doctor learned his wife had a lover, it was as if his life had come to an end. "Just look at yourself," Amara shouted in his face. "You're a failure. Another man would have already become chief physician in your place and earned decent money. Amara, don't you have enough?" Orlan stared at his wife in disbelief. "You live like a queen. You lack nothing." "What nonsense you're talking," she stood her ground. "I want an apartment in Dubai, a new car. I'm ashamed to drive around in this wreck." Orlan had spoiled his wife so much that her audacity had reached its limit. In her infidelity, she tried to blame her unfortunate husband who took bribes and gave her nice gifts to provide for her. But the divorce was scandalous. Amara tried to smear her ex-husband in any way she could. Naturally, she also used their daughter in her game. She immediately declared that he would never see her again. The doctor went mad for almost a year, and then a strange idea came into his head. "I want to leave it all behind," he told himself. "I'll move to our country house. Let everyone leave me in peace." And so he did. The final property division issues were settled, and Orlan secluded himself in an inconspicuous place. He took up yoga and spiritual development, created his own website, and provided consultations on women's health issues. He had enough to live on and was content with it. But it took a long time to forgive himself for the lifestyle Orlan had previously led. Much of it was also connected to Andres. "You've completely transformed your life," his former classmate marveled. "Orlan, you're really something." "I can assure you, I feel much better now," he smiled. "I'll never go back to my old life." "But what about helping children come into this world?" his guest immediately asked. "Isn't that a worthy mission?" "Not in our time," he sighed. "Unfortunately, the system corrupts even those with the purest intentions. As long as everything can be bought and sold, there won't be honest doctors. We don't have free healthcare. People still can't grasp that. Someone always needs to be paid off or thanked. It would be better if services were paid for, at least that would be honest." "Oh, come on," Andres laughed. "You wouldn't survive on your small salary. And how many people have you helped, including me? You know, I regret it now." He looked him straight in the eye. "What I did was a crime." Andres felt like the old Orlan had died. Before him sat a completely unfamiliar person. The man flinched. He felt uncomfortable in this company. The conversation didn't flow, and citing his busy schedule, Andres prepared to leave for home. "It was good to see you," he shook Orlan's hand in farewell. "I hope everything works out for you." "Thank you," the man smiled. "Good luck to you too," he replied without much enthusiasm. Andres had wanted so much to talk openly with his old friend, to tell him about Christina, but now he realized clearly that Orlan was gone from his life forever. "You idiot," he muttered to himself. "To trade such prospects just to stand on your head." Yoga helped him find himself, he chuckled. "Yeah, right. Just wait. You've simply shifted phases." Andres couldn't understand his friend for many reasons. The main one being that Clarissa had never betrayed him. He couldn't even imagine the pain that would cause. Yet, he wasn't bothered by how she would feel once he told her about his mistress. His mood soured. Somewhere inside, he also felt that Orlan was right about something. They shouldn't have started this in the first place, especially now when he wanted to divorce Clarissa. The child was only getting in his way. Clarissa stepped out of the dry cleaners. She worked 7 days a week. The girls worked in shifts. Over the years, her small enterprise had already gained a reputation, so Clarissa no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Now, it was simply a matter of maintaining standards. It was much harder to retain clients than to find them. Despite Clarissa having been in this business for many years, there was always plenty of work. When Clarissa met Andres, he hinted a couple of times that a wife should stay home and tend to the family hearth, but Clarissa immediately made it clear to him that she wasn't going to be financially dependent on him, and in time, her decision proved to be the right one. Not even the birth of their child made her give up her small business. Besides, work kept her from getting involved in any silly arguments with her husband. Clarissa made sure Roman settled into the car properly, started it up, turned around, and headed towards her mother-in-law's place. It should be noted that Andres' parents didn't interfere much in their lives. They loved Roman, so Clarissa occasionally brought their grandson over. "Mom, just don't stay too long," the boy pleaded. "I don't want to be stuck there till night. Grandpa will make me play cards again, and you know how much I hate that." "All right. I promise to be there by 7, his mom smiled. "Roman, maybe we can go somewhere tomorrow? We haven't been out in a while. Dad has a day off tomorrow." "Yeah," the son brightened up. "He promised to play with me. We need to finish our Lego city." "Deal," Clarissa replied, lost in her thoughts. Her son occasionally asked her questions. Roommates were going to move out, and Clarissa was eager to decide whether she needed to expand her business. The dry cleaning was certainly going well. Many households had small washing machines, which was one reason people turned to them. There were also enough wealthy people in town who wore quality branded clothing that couldn't be washed in water. Dry cleaning was required. Rugs had become particularly popular. It was for them that she wanted to slightly expand her space. "I should take it," Clarissa decided to herself about the neighboring shop. "Especially since a few people have already come to look at it. I'll drop off Roman now and call the landlord. We've been working together for many years, so he shouldn't refuse me." The car stopped near a small house. Roman reluctantly got out of it. His grandmother immediately appeared behind the yard. "Clarissa, come in," Senora Camila greeted warmly. "Let's have some coffee," she offered. "I'm sorry, but I can't right now. I'll come by this evening when I pick up Roman," the daughter-in-law promised. She jumped into the car and headed to work. On the way, she called the owner of the premises she rented. He asked her to come by in about an hour. She spent almost half the day sorting out her affairs. It was nearly 6 o'clock, and the woman decided to go pick up Roman right away. She arrived a bit earlier than promised to her son and mother-in-law and entered the house. Just as she had anticipated, her father-in-law was sitting on the floor playing cards with his grandson. "Good evening," she greeted them. "Where's Senora Camila?" "Oh, she's in the garden." "Maybe she went over to the neighbors," replied her father-in-law. "Clarissa, call her home." The guest headed towards the garden. She knew that Andres' parents had a sort of secret entrance. It was a small gate that led to the neighbor's yard. There lived an old lady who had been friends with Clarissa's in-laws for many years. Clarissa guessed that Senora Camila was probably there. There were no women in the garden, and the daughter-in-law approached the gate. Beyond it was the neighbor's awning. Clarissa heard voices. She was just a few meters away from opening the gate when she heard, "Oh, Elisa, it's hard to say. We love Roman as our own grandson," a familiar voice reached her. Clarissa froze. Her heart was pounding so hard she feared it might leap out of her chest. "And where is their son?" the old lady continued. "He's sick, after all. Hardly anyone would want him." "Yes, he has cerebral palsy, not the most severe form, but still," Senora Camila replied. Everything swirled before Clarissa's eyes. She sat down on a large rock right next to the gate. He probably lives in a home for disabled people, her mother-in-law continued. My heart aches for him sometimes. It's a shame for the child, but Andres didn't want him. What could we do? Don't judge, and you won't be judged, whispered the neighbor. Camila, no one knows. Maybe all this happened for the best. All right, Elisa, I'll go. Senora Camila's voice was heard, and Clarissa, shocked, jumped up from the rock and quickly rushed back to the beginning of the garden. Senora Camila, she called out breathlessly. Where are you? Her daughter-in-law struggled to hold back tears. Her mother-in-law emerged from the neighbor's gate with a smile and walked towards her. She immediately noticed Clarissa's pale face. Oh, my stomach is bothering me, she lied. That's why I came early for Roman. Well, of course. Let's get him home, Senora Camila said, concerned. I'll go fetch him. 5 minutes later, Clarissa drove her son home, crying loudly, while Roman didn't understand what was happening to his mom. Sweetie, everything's okay, she wiped away her tears with her hand. There's just one problem, but I'll solve it, I promise. Clarissa couldn't eat. She sat and watched Roman. She loved him unquestionably, he was her child. But what she had heard today was completely changing her life. I can't go on like this, Clarissa whispered. I need to talk to Andres. He's our son. And I'm very curious about where Roman came from, she thought. But that evening, of all times, Andres arrived home late. Clarissa took a sedative, went to bed, and didn't even hear when her husband returned. The next day was the hardest in her life. Everyone was home, and Clarissa realized she couldn't keep silent. She approached Andres, asked him to come to the kitchen. I know everything, she said quietly, and started crying. Her husband stood in complete shock. Andres couldn't understand who had told Clarissa about Christina. He stood there, silent, thinking about how to start. Don't you want to tell me everything yourself? His wife looked him straight in the eyes. He hesitated. But there was nowhere for him to go. Clarissa, I've been wanting to tell you about this for a long time. Yes, I have another woman, he quickly blurted out. Clarissa looked at him in horror. For the first few seconds, it felt like she was watching some kind of movie. You have a mistress, she barely whispered. Andres, her voice trembled, but we have a family, Clarissa babbled. Clarissa, we're adults, he answered coldly. Yes, there was a time I loved you, but then I met Christina. And what about our son? The woman tried to connect everything together. Is he her son? Everything became a blur in Clarissa's mind. What does Roman have to do with this? He exclaimed. Clarissa, let's not turn this into a problem. I'm filing for divorce. We'll divide everything fairly. I have no claims against you. Andres, are you joking? Is this all just a prank? No, he replied harshly. Clarissa, I don't want to live with you. He ruthlessly stabbed a knife into her heart. Everything spun before the woman's eyes, and from the strain, she lost consciousness. Damn it, Andres cursed and rushed to her. He began slapping his wife's cheeks, then lifted her in his arms and laid her on the couch. Clarissa opened her eyes, everything was spinning before her. Andres brought her cold water, administered some valerian tincture. Roman was scared too. He looked at his mother with wild eyes and cried. Clarissa tried to get up but couldn't. It took her an hour to fully come to her senses. Roman was asleep next to her. Andres wasn't home. Oh God, I can't understand anything, Clarissa thought, opening her eyes. This time she managed to get up. She put the kettle on. She didn't want to wake her son. Apparently, the boy had experienced strong stress, exhausted his body, and fallen into a deep sleep. So, now I have two problems. The first one is Andres' infidelity and divorce, and the second one is Roman. Or rather, my real son. She couldn't calm herself down. Her husband returned late. Clarissa didn't call him or create a scene. She had already accepted the thought that Andres had cheated on her, but now she was more concerned about her sick son and what had happened to him. Clarissa prepared for another difficult conversation. It was almost 10 o'clock when the door opened. "I'm here for my things," he said immediately. "Clarissa, I don't want to dwell on all this. What happened, happened. We're adults and we should understand everything." "Andres, your infidelity is on your conscience," she replied calmly. "I'm interested in something else. What is Christina's relationship to our child?" "None," he quickly replied, packing his things into a bag. "Christina and I don't have any children." "Then tell me, where's our child?" Clarissa grabbed his arm. "I know everything. I heard it from your mother. Roman is not our son," she finally said the most difficult part. "So that's what you meant when you said?" Andres paled. "Ah, now everything falls into place. Well, even if that's true, I'm still glad you found out about Christina and me." "I'm not interested in your Christina or you," his wife barely held herself back. "Andres, I demand that you tell me where my son is." "How should I know?" He wiped sweat from his face. "He's still in the hospital." "What do you want to hear from me? That you had serious problems during childbirth and that the boy was born sick? That I tried to protect you so that you wouldn't suffer for the rest of your life? Where's my child?" Clarissa shouted. "How dare you decide for me? I hate you, do you hear me? I'll never forgive you for this. I'm telling you again, I don't know where that child is," Andres snapped angrily. "That's it, leave me alone. If you want, you can report me to the police for loving you and wanting you to be a happy mother. Where's my son?" Clarissa covered her face with her hands and cried. "Give him back to me." Clarissa, her husband, tried to speak to her more calmly. He didn't have any prospects. "He's disabled for life." The woman didn't reply to him, walked into the kitchen, and closed the door behind her. Andres left without saying goodbye. "I will find him for sure," she promised someone. "I will take my child back and get him treated." Clarissa hardly slept all night, and in the early morning, her body gave in and she fell into a deep sleep. She woke up when Roman woke her. "Mom, am I not going to school today?" he asked when she opened her eyes. "Sweetheart, what time is it?" Clarissa hurriedly checked the clock. "It's almost 8:20. Let's get ready quickly. Get dressed, I'll make breakfast." Roman was a little late that day, but he didn't worry about it. The main thing was that his mom was still there, just like before. She didn't cry anymore, although dark circles under her eyes indicated she wasn't feeling well. Clarissa saw Roman off at the gate, then got into her car, rested her head on the steering wheel, and cried. "I'll stop by the dry cleaners, then go home. I need a couple of hours of sleep to start my search," she planned for herself. The car started moving slowly. Bits and pieces of Andres' words spun in Clarissa's head. She understood that if it weren't for their real son, she would have found the divorce very difficult to bear. She might not have survived it at all. Andres had always seemed not just a husband, but also a friend she could trust. But now he had lied to her, at least twice. And these were serious matters. These were situations directly related to Clarissa. Oh Lord, if Andres turned out to be so unreliable, then what can be said about other men, she said aloud. What was lacking for him? Love and care? That's what they usually say. Even stay-at-home wives, who are ready to spend every free minute with their husband, aren't immune to infidelity. So it's all a lie. If he had honestly told me that he was tired of me, that would have been much more honest. Clarissa pulled up to work but decided to sit in her car for a couple more minutes. He found his woman, she laughed. Then who am I? Not his, huh? Didn't he tell me the same thing back then? So men can have many of their own women. She got out of the car. Rubbish. Lust, that's the true reason. When a man has everything going well and no problems, that's when his true nature shows. Andres is just a womanizer. Behind the thick layer of nobleman's guise he always threw in my face, there was always a man unable to control his lustful desires. Clarissa decided that she wouldn't confront her husband or complain to anyone about his infidelity. She had Roman, for whom she wanted to live, and now that she knew about her real son, she felt even more empowered. She wasn't at all bothered by the fact that he was sick. Clarissa woke up to the sound of her alarm. It was almost 11 o'clock. She felt rested. Roman stayed at school for after-hours activities, so she had time for her own errands. The first thing Clarissa did was go to the maternity hospital. She knew that the obstetrician who delivered her baby was Andre's classmate. In fact, he was the one who introduced them. Sometime back, her husband mentioned that he had stopped practicing. Clarissa decided not to call Andres and ask him about it. At the hospital, she was informed that Senor Orlan no longer worked there. When she asked, "How can I find him?" the nurse shrugged and said he lived somewhere outside the city. "Okay," Clarissa whispered, "thank you for your help." She smiled at the nurse and hurried downstairs. She decided to take a different approach. During the first years of their marriage, they had good relations with another of Andre's classmates. She worked in the police, which her husband greatly valued. Clarissa had come to study in Madrid. She was originally from a small town called Cudillero, so apart from a few classmates from the institute, she had no acquaintances here at all. Clarissa entered the police station and quickly found Rosa. She was busy, so Clarissa had to wait a bit. "Rosa, hi," greeted the old acquaintance. "How are you?" she smiled warmly. The women started talking. Clarissa didn't tell Rosa that she and Andres were heading for a divorce. "He's still working at his car repair shop," the guest smiled. "So everything's as usual with us. And why do you need Orlan?" "Surely Andres knows where he lives," Rosa was surprised. "You see, I have some women's issues. I don't want my husband to find out. I want to consult with Orlan. It's a pity he left the maternity hospital. He was such a great doctor." "I understand," Rosa sighed. "After Medina, I couldn't get pregnant again for the second time. There's so much stress at work. Oh, I don't even want to talk about it," she waved her hand. Rosa explained how Clarissa could get to Orlan's house. Clarissa fluttered like a butterfly. Her obstetrician was the key that would open the door to her son. But as soon as Clarissa approached the doctor's house, she was seized by the strongest fear. She began to fear that nothing would work out for her and what she should do next. What will Roman say? For the first time, such a thought crossed her mind. How will I explain the arrival of a disabled boy to him, and how will he react? The mother's heart clenched. Clarissa had so many questions now, and she didn't have answers to any of them. "I'll manage," she said aloud, trying to reassure herself. Indeed, she always did this in difficult situations. She took a deep breath, pressed the doorbell. To distract herself, she examined the small house and well-kept yard. Before long, a familiar face appeared on the street. Orlan looked somewhat surprised as he saw Clarissa. He recognized her immediately. "Clarissa," he smiled. They exchanged greetings, and he waited for her to speak. "Orlan, we need to talk," she said seriously. His expression immediately changed. He seemed to anticipate the topic of conversation. "Come in," he offered. He closed the gate and escorted her into the house. Clarissa immediately felt at ease inside. A pleasant aroma greeted her nose. The atmosphere was simple, yet the numerous plants added to its coziness. Orlan quickly brought 2 glasses of cold water from the kitchen. Clarissa noticed lemon and mint at the bottom of the glasses. "Delicious," she remarked, taking a few sips. "Orlan, I want to say right away that I don't blame you for anything." She paused, and Orlan remained silent. It was very important to him that Clarissa finally spoke her mind. "I don't even know where to begin," tears streamed down Clarissa's cheeks. "Yesterday, I found out that Roman is not our son." Orlan stood up. He gazed out the window. He had wanted to rid himself of this burden for so long. I don't know why I went along with it, he said. Perhaps I was afraid they would accuse me of medical malpractice and pin it all on me. Orlan, I don't blame you for anything. You might have had your own reasons, she tried to speak calmly. Besides, he paid me very well back then. You didn't know about that, he sighed. Back then, money meant a lot to me. Clarissa finished her drink. The mint and lemon seemed to relax her nerves. At least she felt calmer now. Orlan returned to her, sat in the chair opposite, paused for a moment, and continued his story. Apparently, the boy had some issues with his musculoskeletal system. He looked at Clarissa. Not everything can be detected through ultrasound. That's how I see it. The childbirth exacerbated the muscle innervation condition, leading to irreversible bone consequences. Could he have been helped? The guest looked at the former doctor. I don't know, he admitted honestly. Before he was taken to the children's home for the disabled, the examinations showed that he needed very expensive treatment. Naturally, the state wasn't willing to deal with it. Clarissa, the child became ill in the womb. It wasn't my fault, but proving that would have been very difficult. There are real cases where a child develops cerebral palsy due to a doctor's fault, but this time I did everything correctly. As always, Orlan lowered his head. Clarissa covered her face with her hands and cried. She understood that if she had been told back then that her son was disabled, it would have been very difficult for her to cope. Now she was ready, but in those days, Clarissa lacked both wisdom and resilience. Where did Roman come from? She finally calmed down. Orlan, does he have parents? The guest held her breath. No, his mother died during childbirth. You both gave birth on the same day, he replied. They brought us a destitute woman. She had nothing. The delivery was very difficult. The child was born healthy, and she passed away the next day. I see, Clarissa said absently. Orlan, where was he taken? You must know. Yes, to us, he replied dryly. He was placed in a residential care facility for disabled children. Alonso Claros. That's his name from his mother. Alonso, Clarissa couldn't help but say. My son. Lord, I hope he's alive. Perhaps someone adopted him. Unlikely, the host immediately countered. Healthy children aren't wanted, and you think people dream of dealing with the sick? Orlan felt a weight lift from his chest. He had carried this burden for so many years. Why did Andres go along with this? The guest said aloud. Regardless of who he is his father. Clarissa, it's not that simple, the man approached her. Perhaps he was thinking about you at the time. Sorry, but why didn't he tell you about this? This question had been swirling in his head the whole time. Because. She started to reply quickly, then stopped. Because he. Orlan, we're filing for divorce. Andres has a lover. He left for her. Orlan looked at her in bewilderment. When his former friend dropped by recently, he didn't mention any of this to him. I'm very sorry, he said with concern. Clarissa, how do you plan to manage 2 children on your own? He asked reasonably. I'll manage. I'll take my son back, the woman said decisively. Orlan, I won't leave him in the orphanage. I'll do everything possible to treat him. She left, and Orlan immersed himself in his thoughts. In reality, he was relieved that everything had finally come to light. He closed his eyes and remembered those last days when he was still working at the hospital. But you know, I'll pay well, the assistant mayor obstetrician gazed at him. Just tell her the child was stillborn. Certainly, influential people often approached him. Orlan had a good reputation as a professional doctor. But after receiving decent fees for delivering their wives or mistresses, the requests became increasingly monstrous. Many years after Orlan swapped Andres' son with the son of a homeless woman, the deputy mayor approached him. Senor Palban changed his mind and decided to get rid of his mistress's child. Perhaps she was scheming behind his back, trying to secure a portion of his property. Anyway, the man visited the doctor and initially pleaded, then resorted to blackmail. "Aren't you satisfied with your work?" he angrily threw at Orlan when he refused. "You know, just a snap of my fingers is enough." "Snap away," Orlan told him, and that same day he submitted his resignation. It was astonishing news. No one ever expected Orlan to resign. In essence, he was prepared for it. After the divorce, he wasn't in the best shape to deliver babies and perform surgeries. He sighed. Would he want to return to practice again? At first, very much so, but now, not anymore. He was drawn to other pursuits. Despite working for many years in mainstream medicine, Orlan became increasingly interested in alternative methods. And the results pleasantly surprised him. The doctor completed several courses in aromatherapy and lithotherapy, developed a passion for medicinal plants. For emergencies, mainstream medicine is necessary, he thought, but when it comes to chronic illnesses, it lags behind significantly compared to alternative methods. Yoga and essential oils helped Orlan get rid of the cold he suffered from. He also managed to lower his high blood pressure, a sign of an unusual work schedule for his body. Overall, he enjoyed his current life in every respect. Not that he had many clients, but the number of people willing to regain their health, especially when mainstream medicine had given up on them, was growing. Were there successes with Orlan's patients? Definitely yes. He tailored individual programs for each case, and since women with various illnesses turned to him, his experience expanded almost daily. Endometriosis, fibroids, and other incurable conditions in mainstream medicine were giving ground. There were already 2 cases of complete recovery. Regardless, 80% of his clients noted improvements. Orlan felt responsible for Clarissa and Andre's child. He regretted his actions. He needed to get Clarissa's phone number. "I'll search for this boy together with her," the thought came to him. Initially, Orlan wanted to call his former friend, but since the situation was very complex, he didn't risk it. "Tomorrow, I'll visit her myself," he decided, "and we'll go to the children's home together." Clarissa drove home feeling completely drained, as if she had been squeezed dry. After that half-hour conversation with Orlan, she felt like she had lost all her strength. "I don't care what Andres thinks. We're not husband and wife anymore," she said. "I'll take my child back." That evening, Clarissa realized that things were not so simple. She picked up her son from after-school care. Roman was cranky and wanted to see his dad. "Sweetie, he's gone on a business trip," his mother didn't know what else to say. "Then let him call me," the child pleaded. "I miss him already. We didn't go anywhere yesterday." Clarissa couldn't understand how to cope with something beyond her control. Only now did she realize that Roman was deeply affected by this situation. She was also troubled by the fact that Andres hadn't talked to her about Roman. "I'll find Alonso first, then I'll explain everything to Roman," she tried to find a way out. "What will I tell him? That Daddy won't be living with us anymore? That he has another family now?" She couldn't sleep for a long time. Her mind was racing, refusing to give her peace. She kept returning to various thoughts, only for them to abruptly end, leaving her feeling empty once more. In this turmoil, Clarissa lay awake almost until dawn. She didn't even notice when she finally fell asleep. "Andres, if he's not your son, then what's the problem?" Christina gently stroked his hair. "She won't be able to claim child support. Do a DNA test." "I just don't know," he sighed. "I've considered Roman my son for so many years. Sure, deep down I knew he wasn't biologically mine, but I've grown attached to him. But why dwell on him when you're about to have a daughter soon, and she truly is yours? The baby girl is perfectly healthy," the girl stroked her stomach affectionately. "Christina, I have no doubts about you," he kissed his lover. "It's just, no child support will be paid. Do you hear me?" she said more sternly. "I don't want our money going to some other child." Andres couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Christina had said to him. Lately, he hadn't felt much love for Roman. But presenting DNA test results in court and declaring he wouldn't pay child support for him, even Andres found that despicable. But Christina wasn't backing down. She didn't want competitors. When she found out Roman wasn't Andres' son, she immediately realized he was now within her grasp. She had done everything to cool his feelings toward his wife, and now she was trying to separate him from this non-biological son. What should I tell her? Sorry, but this isn't our child, he thought. Clarissa doesn't even know her children were switched. I did that, with Orlan's help, of course. But it was my initiative. In essence, Andres had painted himself into a corner. Telling Clarissa that Roman isn't his son and he won't pay child support would seem very cynical and heartless. Christina sensed her lover's hesitation. She felt like a little more pressure was needed. Andres, I advise you not to delay this conversation, she pressed against him. Talk to her. Tell her we're expecting a daughter soon. After all, she's a mother too, she should understand me. Christina, I can't do that to her, the man resisted. I'm not a brute, he said angrily. Andres, do you want me to leave? She burst into tears. I don't want her child. Can't you see that? I want my family to be happy. Christina dramatically clutched her stomach. Andres was frightened and rushed to her. You're pushing me too far. You'll cause a miscarriage. Promise me you'll talk to her, demanded Christina. All right, he said. Please, calm down. That's it, breathe. Christina, I love you. Can't you see that? Andres, would I eagerly await our child if I didn't love you, she said through tears. Why would I take such risks and get involved with a married man? As much as Andres felt it wasn't right to behave this way, he still yielded to Christina's wishes. He decided he needed to have a serious talk with Clarissa. Clarissa took her son to school and headed straight to the orphanage. Just seeing it made her tremble inside. Oh God, she barely held herself together. Give me strength. She went straight to the director's office. You haven't even seen him, she said angrily. This is how you remember your sick children after many years, thinking you can just take them away easily. I don't think it will be easy, the director replied calmly, but I will definitely take him with me. She didn't take her eyes off Clarissa. He's bedridden, can you understand that? The director didn't want to agree to a meeting. You'll smile at him now and then disappear from his life forever, and he'll suffer. I want to see my child, and I demand that you allow me to do a DNA test, Clarissa said coldly. Look at her, making demands, the woman laughed. I'm in charge here and I make the decisions. Did you demand this when you put your son in the orphanage? No, Clarissa replied. She knew she couldn't tell the whole story. If you don't show me my child, I'll demand a visit through the court, the guest persisted. Fine, the director said fearfully. You'll have 5 minutes. I think that's enough time for you to decide never to come back here. I'll decide for myself what to do, the guest snapped, following the woman. Clarissa knew this meeting would be tough for her. She had long imagined in her mind a boy lying in bed. His little hands were twisted, his mouth wouldn't close properly so it constantly drooled, and his eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. The director stopped at a door, shot an angry look at the guest, and opened it. She entered first, then a few minutes later, she asked Clarissa to come in. Clarissa entered on trembling legs. There were 4 children in the room. A light-haired boy lay on one bed near the window. Clarissa immediately knew it was him, though there were 3 other children present. Can I give the children some treats? She asked the director. She nodded in dissatisfaction. Clarissa handed out small packets of treats. 2 of the children showed typical signs of cerebral palsy. They made strange sounds. Another boy couldn't even turn his head. Alonzo, this is for you. Clarissa approached his bed. Sorry, I didn't know you liked sweets. The boy looked intently at her. Clarissa could barely hold herself together. His gaze seemed to pierce right into the depths of her heart. Thank you, he said softly. It doesn't matter to me. It was only now that Clarissa noticed how much he resembled his father. His eyes, hair, and smile all echoed a younger Andres. Clarissa helped him unwrap the candy, peeled an orange for him. She didn't even realize what had happened during her meeting with her son when the director's command was heard. "We need to go." She approached Clarissa and stared at her with her small, unkind eyes. Before leaving, Clarissa turned around once more. She had no more doubts that she would return here again. "I will take him. Please provide me with a list of documents required for adoption," she confidently told the director. Orlan stopped near the house, quickly walked up to the gate, pressed the doorbell, but no one opened it to him. 8:30. She must have already left, the guest sighed. He hesitated to arrive earlier, but now he realized he was late. He would have to catch Clarissa only in the evening. "All right, I'll come at 8, the guest sighed, got into his car. "We'll discuss everything with her then." Meanwhile, Clarissa was heading home. She was incredibly happy. Yes, Alonso had a very serious illness, but he could speak normally. And as his mother realized, the child had a good understanding, so she felt hopeful that something could be done for him. Suddenly, Clarissa remembered Roman. She was torn and didn't know how to tell him about his father. "I'll ask Andres to meet with him occasionally," she thought. "And also, even if he doesn't want Alonso, I still have to tell him about him." Clarissa grabbed her phone and called her ex-husband. He didn't answer for a long time. "Yeah," his displeased voice finally came through. "Clarissa, I'm busy right now." "What do you want?" "Andres, we need to talk. It's urgent. Can you meet me in a couple of hours?" "Can you?" she asked. "Okay," he replied without much enthusiasm. On one hand, it was an opportunity for him to talk with her, but on the other, he really didn't want to disclose everything to her. Avoiding involvement with Roman in his case would be extremely cruel. But for Christina's sake, he had to go through with it. At that moment, Andres couldn't see any other way out for himself. Clarissa pulled into work. She spent an hour catching up on tasks. She needed something to distract herself. The events of the past few days had been so emotionally draining that she could barely cope. She took a few sips of hot coffee. Warmth spread through her body. She closed her eyes. Alonso's face appeared before her. Her heart clenched tighter. "Everything will be all right, sweetheart," she whispered. A few tears fell into her cup. "I can do this. I will do everything possible to help." Clarissa sighed dreamily. She glanced at the clock. She didn't want to be late for her meeting with her husband. They had agreed to meet at a cafe. Clarissa approached this meeting with great hope. Naturally, she wasn't thinking about getting back together with Andres. Besides, she found it hard to forgive his infidelity. She simply wanted her children to have a father. Regardless of how things would unfold in their lives, the children deserved to see their father. Clarissa arrived at the cafe earlier than the appointed time. She sat in her car with her eyes closed. She was very sleepy. She planned to spend no more than an hour talking with Andres, then she needed to pick up Roman. She opened her eyes and noticed her ex-husband's car pulling up. She flinched. She glanced in the mirror, ran her hand through her hair, and entered the cafe. Andres was already sitting at the table, nervously tapping his fingers. "Hi," she smiled. "Andres, I'm not going to lecture you on how to live your life. After all, you've said yourself that we're adults. Clarissa, let's make it quick." "I'm in a hurry," he nervously said. "Sorry, but..." He tried to come up with an excuse. "I understand everything, Andres. It will be fair if I tell you everything," the woman sighed deeply. "I found our son. His name is Alonso, and he looks a lot like you." The man squirmed nervously in his chair. All these surprises with children were already getting to him. "Clarissa, I don't want to hear anything about him," he said coldly. The smile disappeared from his ex-wife's face. "Andres, but he is your son. He needs you. And Roman keeps asking about you all the time." Why should the children suffer because of their parents' choices? Roman is not my son, he gritted through his teeth. And you know that, Clarissa. I have another family. Andres, wait, her heart pounded furiously. Are you saying you won't meet our son? No, he replied curtly. Please don't bother me anymore. I'll do a DNA test. My wife is pregnant. I can't be torn apart. We don't need your child support, his former wife tried to reason with him. Andres, Roman loves you. He will suffer. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I told you he's not my son, the man snapped and headed towards the exit. Clarissa certainly hadn't expected this from her ex-husband. She couldn't even comprehend what to call it. Has he completely lost his mind? She whispered. How can someone play with people like that? He's a child, after all. On the way back, Clarissa tried to understand her husband's motives, but all she could think of was madness. He must realize the deep pain Roman will feel, she reasoned. He's not stupid. How could he do this intentionally? Ideas about Christina, Andres' lover, being an unstable person started popping into Clarissa's head. It didn't excuse her ex-husband, but dancing to the tune of such an idiot was too much. I have a feeling this idiot woman will use the same methods against him, Clarissa sighed. Andres, you're a complete fool. You have 2 sons, and you could have maintained a relationship with them for life and hoped for their help. But you ruined your own future with your own hands. And all for what? For some crazy lover. The mere thought of how to tell Roman that his father didn't want to know him pained her deeply. She also feared he would find out he wasn't his biological son. Poor boy, she cried again. How do I protect you from all this? Clarissa decided to take a few days to think about how best to tell Roman about their divorce. She also needed to tell him about his brother. It's awful, the woman whispered. I feel like I'm being sucked into a whirlpool, and I can't escape. And the most interesting part is that it's not my fault. Behind my back, Andres was creating a life that he thought was best for him. He didn't care about me at all. Roman, according to his mother, knew that Andres was away on a business trip. Secretly from his mother, he had called him several times today, but at first his father didn't pick up, and then the son realized that his number was blocked. Mom, when will Dad come back? He said. I miss him so much. And Roman burst into tears. Sweetie, his mom said wearily, there will come a time when we will talk about it. Let's not do it now. Back home, they had dinner. Neither of them were in the mood. Clarissa felt like as soon as she solved one problem, another immediately appeared. She tried to distract herself while Roman played, and then unexpectedly the phone rang. Clarissa went outside. Orlan, hello, she tried to smile. I didn't expect to see you. Clarissa, let's talk, he said calmly. I came to your place this morning. I wanted us to go together to find Alonzo. I've already found him, she replied immediately. Orlan, I will be filing documents for him. After the divorce, I'll take him with me. And how is he? The former doctor asked with interest. Can he walk? He looked intently into her eyes. No, she shook her head negatively, but he can speak and move his hands. Clarissa, I want to help you, Orlan lowered his head. After all, I'm partly to blame for this whole situation. Orlan, I'm not blaming you for anything, she reassured him. Let's go inside, let's talk, Clarissa finally suggested. They sat in the kitchen. Orlan put forward his hypotheses, but without examining the boy, he couldn't say anything for sure. The director outlined his diagnosis to me in general terms, the woman explained. She was so angry with me that she didn't show me his documents. She immediately started accusing me of taking him away and then bringing him back in a month. Orlan, that won't happen. Did you talk to Andres about this? He asked, looking at her intently. I suppose as a father, he should know about this. Orlan, Andres turned out to be. Sorry, but I have no words. Not only does he not want to meet Alonzo, he even disowned Roman. I don't understand what's happening to him. Today he told me that Roman is not his son and he won't pay child support for him. After all these years of being with him. Besides, he himself initiated the substitution of the children, the guest side. I'm afraid Andres doesn't understand what he's doing. To be honest, I don't care anymore. For me, the most important thing is that my children are healthy and happy, Clarissa replied. Orlan agreed with her that next time he would go to the orphanage with her. He wanted to see the boy. This time, the director was even more dissatisfied than before. She kept expressing her discontent to the guests. You're just wasting my time and making the child get used to you, she didn't hold back in her expressions. I'm a doctor, Orlan said coldly, staring her in the eyes. You're exceeding your authority, and I know where to report this. She quieted down a bit and led the guests to Alonso. The boy was sleeping. They had to wait for about half an hour. I would like to take him with me today. Clarissa couldn't bear the pressure and burst into tears. Orlan, you know how painful this is. The man approached and hugged her. He really wanted Clarissa to finally be with her child. He looked intently at Alonso. First, he checked his body, then touched certain points. The boy didn't react. He stood and contemplated. One of his hands touched the back of his head. Orlan touched an inconspicuous point, then pressed on it forcefully, and one of the boy's hands twitched involuntarily. Then the former doctor started working on the entire spine. 2 more points turned out to be partially blocked. Orlan clearly saw how he pressed on one of them with such force that one of the boy's toe fingers trembled slightly. There it is, he said joyfully. Alonso, did you feel anything? The boy shook his head negatively, but Orlan was satisfied with what he had seen with his own eyes. Clarissa, we have some chances, he smiled as they drove back home. I don't know where this might lead, but this is how I see it. Several courses, possibly treatment that could extend for several years. I mean official treatment. We need good medications and an individual program. I'll develop it. We'll need to design exercises and include the necessary points. I'll apply everything. Maybe we'll be lucky. Thank you, Orlan. I don't know what I would do without you, Clarissa sighed. I wouldn't have lost my son, he replied sadly. Clarissa, let me finish this. The divorce was finalized. The former spouses settled their affairs without disputes. Clarissa was fully immersed in Alonso. Mom, Roman approached her one day. Please, take me to Dad. I saw him today near the school. Idiot, Clarissa cursed silently to herself. Why torment the child like this? Roman, honey, I need to tell you something important. Her voice trembled. You see, it happened that Dad met another woman. He has a new family now. But what about me? The boy cried, tears streaming down his face. He doesn't love me anymore? He rushed into Clarissa's arms. He does, of course. But the woman was at a loss. She didn't understand how to explain all this to the child. But he's very busy right now. His new wife is expecting a baby girl soon. I'll have a sister, the boy's face lit up. Mom, will you take me to them? I'll play with her. Roman, his mother cried too. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Forgive me, but you have a brother. But he's ill. A brother, the boy couldn't grasp what was happening. And a sister and a brother? Mom, is this true? Sweetheart, Dad married the lady who's expecting a child from another man. An idea came to her mind. That's why you won't have a sister. But you do have a brother, that's true. Why didn't you tell me anything about this? He asked her, displeased. Roman, I didn't know myself. You see, they didn't tell me in the hospital that one of my sons is very ill and may not survive. They took Alonso away from me, and I only found him again recently. His name is Alonso, joy sparkled in the boy's eyes. Mom, I'll play with him. Sweetheart, he's sick. He can't walk, she finally told him. Her son thought for a moment. "It's okay," he shouted. "We'll put Lego on the bed and build it." He ran to his room for the box. Clarissa covered her face with her hands and cried. A heavy burden lifted from her shoulders. She knew Roman would miss his father very much, but she had hoped now that he would bond with her boy. "Promise me you'll take me to him," Roman immediately demanded. "I'll take my toys to him." "I promise," his mother kissed him. "You'll be a good brother." "I'm sure of it." Roman had no doubt in her words. For 3 days, he prepared for the meeting. There was already a bag in the hallway. "Roman, what's this?" his mother asked, surprised, before they left the house. "Gifts for my brother," he proudly replied. "I want to give Alonzo my favorite toys." "Roman, sweetheart, let's take them in parts. They might scold us at the orphanage if we bring so much to him at once." "Okay," agreed her son, and he began pulling toys out of the bag to conduct an inventory. Finally, he selected a toy car, an airplane, a Lego house, and a board game. Throughout the entire journey, Roman couldn't stop talking. He enthusiastically described how they would play with his brother, swim in the pool during summer, and watch cartoons. Clarissa smiled the whole way. She hadn't felt this happy in a long time. Alonzo already knew that the woman who visited him all the time wanted to adopt him. She had also told him that she had a son. The boy was very emotional. For as long as he could remember, he had always dreamed of having a family. And now that it was happening, he was very scared. There were rumors that even those like him who were taken in were returned very soon. "Hey, brother," Roman burst into the room. "Alonzo, just look at what I brought you." And he began to pull toys out of the bag. Alonzo looked at the stranger in bewilderment. His heart almost jumped out of his chest. "Here's the racing car, but Mom said you can't use the remote here." "You know how much speed I squeeze out of it." Roman couldn't stop talking. "We have a good asphalt yard, so we'll race together." A few minutes later, Alonzo also joined the conversation. Their mother watched them and cried with joy. "Oh Lord, thank you," she whispered. "Now my boys will grow up together. They'll become real friends." Finally, the day came when Alonzo was taken home. At first, everything was unfamiliar to him. Immediately, Orlan got involved with Clarissa. He had already agreed with a good doctor. He examined the boy, prescribed treatment for him. 2 days later, Alonzo was already receiving IVs at home. A week later, Orlan himself got involved in the treatment. Roman never left his brother's side. They did everything together. Only during school did each of them study separately. Roman, as expected, went to school, and the teacher came to Alonzo's home. "Roman, it's so simple," his brother smiled when he complained that he couldn't do his homework. "Bring it here, I'll explain it to you." Half an hour later, under his brother's dictation, Roman finished his math. Naturally, their mother didn't see. "Thanks, bro, just don't tell Mom anything," he asked, "or else she'll scold me." "I promise," Alonzo assured. "You can count on me," he added in a mature tone. 8 months passed. Roman ran to his mother, eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. "Mom, Alonzo," he struggled to say. Grabbing her hand, he hurried to the children's room. Clarissa saw Alonzo sitting up in bed. She let out a cry of surprise. "Mom, I can sit," her son rejoiced. "I can feel my back. I touched it with my hands." Clarissa immediately called Orlan. He examined the boy. It was a success, both in conventional and unconventional medicine. "Well done, Alonzo," he chuckled nervously. Even the former doctor hadn't expected such a development. "This calls for a celebration. Get the carriage ready," he shouted at the top of his voice. Orlan went to a special store, brought back a wheelchair. Now Alonzo could move around the house independently. "Hooray!" Roman danced around his brother. "We did it," he exclaimed, tossing his hat in the air with joy. The treatment continued, and exactly 2 years after it began, Alonzo finally stood up. Clarissa cried tears of joy. Roman squealed with happiness. Orlon sat in his chair, hands covering his face, also crying. Only God knew how much effort had been invested. And not for a moment did any of them doubt that Alonzo would stand. Of course, the boy wasn't fully cured. He still limped, always needing a crutch. But that didn't matter as much anymore. "Let's go to a cafe," Roman suggested. "Mom, Orlon, we love Alonzo's favorite place. Let everyone see that my brother can walk now." Of course, the boy couldn't handle such a big load yet, so the adults brought along the wheelchair too. Clarissa sat, watching her children. Then she looked at Orlon. They had come such a long way together through all the hardships. Their eyes met. In his gaze, Clarissa read everything she had long known, his loyalty, love, and care for her and her children. They returned home. The children went to sleep in their room, while Clarissa and Orlon sat in the living room. Both were silent. "I'm so happy for you," the guest broke the silence. "Clarissa," he swallowed the lump in his throat. "I don't want to lie. Over these 2 years and more, you've become my family. I love you and the children." "Orlon, you mean a lot to us too," she smiled. "I never thought I'd say this after Andres left, but I love you too. With you, everything feels calm and easy, even in the midst of a raging ocean. I don't know how to explain it. I've never met anyone like you. Clarissa, maybe I'm different from others in just one way: I'm willing to change myself. Otherwise, there's nothing special about me," he said calmly. "Many people engage in spiritual practices and yoga, but for me, it's not a tool to assert my uniqueness. I do it because I enjoy it." Andres sat in his car. His mood was at an all-time low. The situation with Christina was worsening by the day. He had hoped that after the birth of their child, she would improve, but instead, her temperament had worsened significantly. His wife was constantly dissatisfied with something. Either his workshop brought in little income, or she threw jealous fits, accusing him of having someone else. Andres' parents did not approve of his choice, especially after he told them he would no longer be in contact with Roman. "You fool, Andres," his father spat at him. "Because of that tramp, you've lost such a woman. And now you're left without a son." His parents had been speaking through gritted teeth all this time. His father immediately declared that he wouldn't put up with this for long, swearing roughly that he wouldn't be living with them. "I'm all alone now," Andres cried. "What have I achieved? Betrayed everyone and expected that no one would ever treat me like this." Only now did Andres realize that Christina had treated him the same way he had once treated Clarissa. She didn't allow him to spend time with their daughter, always claiming the child was hers. "I can't take it anymore," he said, getting out of the car and heading home. There, Christina was already waiting with complaints. "Where have you been?" she yelled like a madwoman. "Found yourself someone younger? I've been taking care of the child, and you?" She waved her hands in front of her husband. "Christina, I'm filing for divorce. It's over. I've had enough of you. Living with you is unbearable," he coldly said. "What? Who needs you except me, you idiot? I've put up with you for almost 4 years. Andres didn't care anymore what she thought. He sought refuge with his parents. His mother convinced his father, and they let him in. Naturally, Christina didn't hesitate in this situation. She demanded huge alimony for their daughter. The court, however, denied her such requests, granting her only what was legally due. Andres had been living in a completely different part of the city all this time. He moved his workshop further away from his former home, so he never crossed paths with Clarissa. He avoided going downtown; it held no interest for him anymore. His father had heard rumors that Clarissa had married Orlon. "You let such a woman slip away," his father scolded. "I never thought my son would turn out to be such a fool." It was a cool October day when Andres decided to take a stroll through the city. He was now a free man. He stepped into a small cafe and immediately heard loud laughter. He turned towards the source and saw Clarissa sitting at a table with a baby in her arms. "Dad, get me another milkshake." "And Alonzo wants a strawberry one," he heard a teenager's voice say. Andres took a closer look and recognized Roman. He quickly turned away and headed towards the exit. As a last glance, he looked again at the people who had once been so close to him. Orlan approached the table with a tray. He arranged everything neatly, then picked up the baby. It was a boy. Clarissa kissed him. She looked at the two teenagers with happy eyes and laughed cheerfully. "God, it hurts so much," Andres whispered. "I destroyed my own happiness with my own hands. I had everything, and now there's emptiness." He hurried to his car. He deeply regretted turning away from Roman once upon a time. Even if Clarissa had married someone else, he would have had a son. But now Roman called someone else dad. "Orlan." "Rafe, come here," Roman called his younger brother. "Dad, let me have him," he asked his father. Once, now it seemed like a long time ago, Roman had lost the most precious thing in his life, his family. Back then, he could never have imagined that this loss would lead to him finding the best friend and brother, Alonzo, and later gaining another little brother, Rafe, and that one day he would call Orlan dad and never regret it. Roman held the baby in his arms and smiled contentedly. Alonzo joined him and started playing with his little brother. The parents watched them and rejoiced. There it was, the long-awaited